The headlines are lying to you. Every major news network is celebrating the Pakistan-India ceasefire, showing diplomats shaking hands and anchors moving on to the next story. But I need you to stop right there, because if you think this was just another regional military standoff that got patched up, you are staring at a single pixel and entirely missing the picture. The story underneath this ceasefire is arguably the most critical geopolitical shift of the 21st century. Today, as your resident professor of global strategy, I am not here to debate the tactical details of who fired what or which general made which phone call. I want to ask the question that is keeping analysts awake at night in Washington, London, and New Delhi. What does it mean when a country of 240 million people, long written off as economically dependent and internally divided, suddenly forces the most volatile region on Earth to stand down? This is not an ending. This is a prologue. And I am going to show you exactly why the old world order just cracked and what is about to replace it. To understand what just happened, you have to understand the arrogant psychology of great powers. When historical empires look at smaller nations, they do not see sovereign states with their own rich history, strategic logic, and national dignity. They see variables in a math equation. They see expendable pieces on a grand chessboard. America does it, China does it, India does it. Throughout the Cold War and the decades that followed, Pakistan was treated exactly like this, a variable. Pressured when inconvenient, funded when useful for someone else's war, and threatened with isolation when it dared to be defiant. Dependency breeds control. When you rely on foreign aid and structural loans, your foreign policy is effectively rented out. But something fundamentally shifted in this recent confrontation. Pakistan did not fold. They did not play the obedient pawn. They did not panic under the weight of international expectations. Instead, they responded with a calculated, surgical precision that sent a shockwave through every global intelligence agency. Their underlying message was unmistakable. We are no longer a variable in your equation. We have written our own. And this was not a stroke of luck. This was not a fluke of diplomacy. This was the result of three massive, quiet forces converging at the exact same moment in history. Let us examine the board and break down these three forces. The first force is a complete global misunderstanding of military reality. The West still pictures Pakistan's military as an oversized force holding on to outdated Cold War hand-me-downs, reliant on American spare parts. That assumption is fatally out of date. While the world was distracted by other conflicts, Pakistan underwent a quiet, lethal modernization of its armed forces. And quiet is the operative word here. There were no massive parades, no boastful speeches at the United Nations, just building, testing, and refining. Take the JF-17 Thunder aircraft, for example. To the untrained eye, it is just a fighter jet. To a military strategist, it is the ultimate symbol of strategic independence. Because it is co-developed and manufactured domestically, it means that when a Western superpower gets angry and cuts off supply chains, Pakistan's airspace does not crumble. They control their own maintenance. They control their own upgrades. Combine this indigenous manufacturing with a ballistic and cruise missile program that has reached terrifying levels of accuracy. Deterrence is not about winning a war. Deterrence is about making the cost of starting a war so unimaginably high that your opponent puts their weapons down. When military planners in New Delhi sit down to calculate the cost of a full-scale conflict, those calculations have become extremely uncomfortable. Pakistan's ability to strike with precision and sustain a conflict has fundamentally shaken the comfortable illusion that a war could be easily contained. That illusion has evaporated, but military hardware without economic gravity is just noise. You cannot eat missiles, and you cannot fund a nation on deterrence alone. Enter the second force, the China factor. Forget the simplistic, feel-good narrative that China and Pakistan are just best friends. Nations do not have friends, they have strategic interests. And China's interest in Pakistan is a matter of absolute structural survival. It centers entirely around CPEC, the $62 billion China-Pakistan economic corridor. This is a massive web of highways, railways, and pipelines connecting China's western Xinjiang region directly to the Arabian Sea at Gwadar Port. Why does this matter so much? Because of something strategists call the Malacca Dilemma. Right now, China's economic jugular runs through the Strait of Malacca, a narrow, crowded waterway near Indonesia. In the event of a global conflict, the United States Navy could blockade that strait in an afternoon, effectively starving the Chinese economy of oil and halting its exports. CPEC bypasses that choke point entirely. It provides a direct, overland economic lifeline. This means Pakistan's stability and sovereignty are not just diplomatic talking points for Beijing. They are a matter of supreme national security. A humiliated, weakened, or destabilized Pakistan directly threatens China's grand, century-long strategy. India knows this perfectly well. Suddenly, a bilateral conflict over a border is no longer bilateral. It becomes a high-stakes triangle involving the second largest economy and the largest standing army on Earth. And in the brutal math of geopolitics, triangles are always harder to break than straight lines. Now, let us move to the third force, and it is the one that almost nobody on the evening news is talking about. For the last 70 years, the global narrative was incredibly simple. The West sets the rules, and the developing world adapts to them. But that narrative is cracking in real time. We are witnessing the awakening of the global South. From the unequal hoarding of vaccines during the global pandemic, to the weaponization of the US dollar, to the deeply selective and hypocritical application of international law in the Middle East, the global South has finally realized that the geopolitical casino is rigged against them. When Pakistan stood its ground in this standoff, it did not just defend its borders. It broadcast a massive psychological signal to Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the African Union. It served as a proof of concept. It proved that resistance to the old unipolar order is actually possible. History is rhyming again. Think back to the 1940s. The British Empire collapsed in Asia not because they lost a single massive bloody war, but because the underlying balance of economic and political power had shifted so much that the empire simply became unworkable. We are living through a similar tectonic shift today. Pakistan sits squarely at the geographic crossroads of Iran, China, India, and the Arabian Sea. Geography is destiny, and the tectonic plates are moving under our feet. So, what happens tomorrow? I promised you at the beginning of this lecture that this is a prologue. Here is what you need to watch for next. First, expect a rapid acceleration of Pakistan's economic repositioning. For decades, Pakistan's economy bled because it operated as a frontline state for other people's wars. From the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in the 80s to the war on terror after 2001, Pakistan traded its own social fabric and blood for conditional aid. And that aid built dependency, not true economic capacity. But as Pakistan proves its strategic resilience on the world stage, the calculus of global investors changes. It suddenly becomes a highly attractive partner for wealthy Gulf states and resource-rich Central Asian republics. Capital flows to stability, and nobody wants to invest billions in a nation that can be easily bullied. By holding its ground, Pakistan has essentially put up a giant neon sign that says it is open for serious sovereign business. Second, watch the rise of alternative global institutions. The Shanghai Cooperation Organization now has India, Pakistan, Iran, and China sitting at the exact same table as full members. Think about the gravity of that. Bitter rivals are sitting in the same security forum, and they are doing it without asking Washington for permission. Alongside the massive expansion of the BRICS economic bloc, Pakistan now has unprecedented leverage. As these non-Western institutions grow more powerful, Pakistan can finally look at the traditional Western powers and say, we have other options. And for the first time in modern history, it will not be a bluff. But as a professor, I must ask you to step away from the grand chessboard for a moment. Because behind all this brilliant game theory, behind the missile trajectories and trade corridors, there is a profound human cost. Wars are never just lines on a map. They are paid for in human anxiety, lost potential, and generational trauma. In India, this ambiguous outcome will likely fuel a more aggressive, compensatory nationalism in their domestic politics. In Pakistan, military success historically disrupts the fragile, complex balance between civilian and military governance. A dynamic, vibrant civil society will have to navigate this newfound confidence with extreme caution to protect its democratic institutions. But the real, heartbreaking tragedy is the shared cultural DNA of these two nations. We are talking about families divided by heavily militarized lines they cannot cross. We are talking about the people of Kashmir, living under the perpetual, exhausting shadow of a gun barrel for over 7 decades. We can analyze multipolar shifts and economic corridors all day long, but any vision for the future of South Asia that ignores this deeply personal human dimension is strategically bankrupt. Peace in this region is not just a political treaty signed on a piece of paper. It requires untangling 75 years of deep psychological trauma. Let me bring this all together into a final framework for you to take away. We are witnessing the messy, real-time birth of a multipolar world. The unipolar era of undisputed American dominance is over. Pakistan has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that it is a genuine deterrent actor. It is not merely a problem to be managed. It is a power to be respected. It has won a moment of incredible national confidence, proving it can hold together under immense pressure. But here is the professor's final warning, and it is the most critical thing I will say to you today. The greatest mistake any nation can make in the span of its history is confusing a fleeting moment of tactical success with a permanent strategic advantage. Confidence without wisdom is a dangerous liability. Pakistan still faces brutal internal realities. It needs sweeping economic reforms. It needs strict governance accountability. It needs to provide jobs and futures for millions of brilliant young minds so they don't take their talents overseas. No amount of geopolitical maneuvering or military success can fix a broken economy back home. The standoff we just witnessed did not start because someone was overwhelmingly stronger. It started because someone was impatient. And the peace did not hold because someone was weaker. It held because someone was wise enough to know exactly when the point had been made. Pakistan stopped the war. That is a historical fact. But stopping a war is not the same thing as building a peace. One requires a disciplined military and a strong deterrent. The other requires generations of patience, institution building, political courage, and visionary leadership. The world is watching South Asia right now, and it is serving as the ultimate test case for the 21st century. Can rising nuclear-armed powers learn to manage their historical rivalries without destroying themselves in the process? Can the rules of a new world order be written before the old rules completely burn down? The pause button has been hit. The immediate crisis is over. But now the real work begins. Class dismissed.